All right, welcome in. Cube Show Podcast, college football podcast. Comes to you on Sundays. Now we're back on a little bit more of a normal schedule, so we'll be all right. Haven't been able to do this in a while. Brought to you by Wickles Pickles. Wickedly delicious. Back home, in the house. No games this weekend. Home first time in 16 weeks. Had a little holiday show-offs. Daughter had her performance 3 times, Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday evening. Got a little church in, got to hang out with the family, watch a little bit of football. It's been cool. Bowl games started up. Hope you're enjoying those. And you guys know each and every week we're brought to you by Wickles Pickles. Wickedly delicious. Get them in your grocery store. Ask your grocer why they don't have them. Go to wickelspickles.com. They're fantastic. A lot of you in the comments have been saying you just got them. You love them. We keep them around the house. We snack on them. They are fantastic. Thanks for supporting them. And check them out for us, wickelspickles.com. So football kind of getting back into the swing of things. Army-Navy game this weekend, must-watch TV for me every week. Surprised they be able to pull that one off after Army won the Joe Moore Award, especially to the best offensive line in college football, which, I was for that. That was the team that I thought should have won it. And I thought, I don't understand, people are going to point to some of the triple option principles. People are going to point to the schedule, but the way that group played and the technique fundamentals that they used, I thought they deserved it. Travis Hunter picks up the Heisman, also agreed with that one. And I'm somebody that would have some weird votes. Like Quentin Williams, I thought at Bama should have won it. Quentin Nelson at Notre Dame should have won it. Orlando Pace at Ohio State should have won it. But Travis Hunter was the most outstanding player. Whether it's interceptions off tips, whether it's yards after catch, he still made plays. He did those things, and he was in the game impacting the play. So the people that are complaining about snap count, I don't really look at it as he won it just because of snap count. It was the impact that he had when he was in the game playing those snaps. I mean, first ever Big 12 player to be first team all conference offense and defense. I mean, he's doing things guys haven't done in 50, 100 years of college football. So it's incredible, amazing to watch. Congrats to him. I want to talk a little bit of transfer portal today. I'll give you my final college football playoff predictions at the end of this show. And then I'm going to give you my top 5 transfer portal acquisitions in the SEC this first week of the transfer portal. Has not quite been a full week yet, but just as we get closer. And I want to asterisk this because I think Eric Singleton, Georgia Tech wide receiver, is going to commit to Ole Miss. If that happens, that would easily be number 1 here. He is a dynamo. He's super explosive, big-time playmaker. He can hurt you east and west. He can get you down the field, work the middle of the field. 5'11", 190, super explosive. Perfect for that offense if that's where it ends up being. 56 catches, 754 yards, 3 touchdowns this year. Ran for 131 yards and a touchdown. He would be number 1 on this list. He would be. He's that guy. I don't know. I haven't seen it reported, so I don't know 100% if it's going to happen yet. So I'm not going to put him at 1 because I don't know for sure if that's going down. Or if it's at Texas, LSU, or Auburn, he's number 1 still. He's that big time of a player. But speaking of big time players, we'll start with 5 then, and we'll go backwards. Start with Mississippi State, Red Hibbler, edge defender from NC State. He got hurt early this year, only played in, I think, 4 games, 6'2", 264, 6.5 sacks in 2023. He is a thicker edge defender. So he's not going to be your wiry, long, lengthy, a lot of bend and twitch edge rusher. This is more of your prototypical 3-4 defensive end, but I think he has enough twitch to go outside and rush the passer out there at times. He holds the point well, uses his hands well. He plays bigger than he is. I saw him on a couple of combos against Tennessee, held his ground, and that's against a monster offensive line. So I think that he's a guy that can go in there, play multiple places, give you a little more oomph at the line of scrimmage. They need size, girth, strength. So even if he's a 4-down end, at times he bulks you up a little bit. He can be more of a pass rushing guy down inside, maybe in 3-down somewhat, or in 4-down, and then play your 3-down end as well. I think he's strong enough to be able to handle that. So I think it's a good get if he's healthy, and that's my number 5 going to the Mississippi State Bulldogs. By the way, Mississippi State's having a good week in the portal. We'll recap a little bit of it at the end of this. 4, Missouri wide receiver Kevin Coleman out of Mississippi State. Mizzou's going to need receivers. Luther Burden to the NFL. And in this offense where you're able to move guys, motion, quick throws, using the decoys, and then also creating things for individual players at that position. Kevin Coleman's going to be able to help. He is a spark plug. He can go 5'11", 180, 74 catches, 932 yards this year, a lot of them after the catch, but 6 touchdown receptions. He's gone down the field too and made plays. So I'm not putting that past him. I think you can line him up in different places. And with an offense where you're going to single guys up, look for matchups, create matchups, and then also use guys in the screen game, in the jet game, quick game, down the field, work the middle of the field with a lot of the motion that's going to go one way, come back the other way. I think he's a guy that can make some explosive plays in that offense. I think Kevin Coleman, wide receiver from Mississippi State, is a huge get for Missouri, and he would come in at number 4. Number 3, Auburn gets Oklahoma quarterback Jackson Arnold. I have been a little bit surprised at the response to this from Auburn fans. I think that there are some folks that are sort of comparing it to Peyton Thorne coming in. Peyton Thorne was a proven veteran. He had been a multi-year starter, played a ton of games. This is a little bit different in that regard. I think you're still taking this young man out of the portal with a lot of upside in mind because, and you guys listen to this show, you know what I said about him all year. Once you get past the quick game, he really struggles. So Hugh Freeze has got his work cut out for him. This is not going to be just an automatic come in, throw for 3,500 yards, rush for 600. It's not going to be that at all. Not a polished passer from a progression standpoint, an understanding standpoint, but he can make every throw on the field. He throws a beautiful ball. He gets it out quick. This is an elite talent that Hugh Freeze and Auburn are bringing in. It's just you have some of the issues with actually getting rid of the football. Now, it'll be an RPO-based offense, which there's some similarities there, some quarterback run stuff, which are similarities there. It's not going to be exactly the same. But I do think Freeze can find ways to help him attack downfield where maybe his eyes won't be as foolish as they were in the previous scheme. So I think he can sort of simplify some things down the field that might be able to help Jackson Arnold. And then he can be a dynamic run threat. Ran 150 times for 444 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had 131 yards rushing against Bama. He gives you that. And I think he's durable enough to be able to handle it also. If you want to draw up 8, 12 rushes a game, he can handle that. He can manage it. He's an explosive runner. I think it was a Tulane game. He took one off the end, went like 60-something, 70-something yards. So he can be a pull-away back as well. But I just think it's a great get from a talent perspective. Auburn's going to take 2. So to say, this isn't the guy that we thought was going to come in, start right now, be the guy, then that's okay because you're still going to get somebody who's going to come in and have some starting experience in this league and be not too far off from a talent perspective of anybody else playing this league. He's a little bit short on the shorter side, but it's a big get for Auburn because they had to have that talent and they had to have that guy that could at least come in and be coached into making those plays. Jackson Arnold's got that. Number 2 for me is Ole Miss tight end Luke Haas. He comes in from Arkansas, and this is a young man that I absolutely loved during the season. I wondered, over and over and over, like, why are they not using him? Why is he not getting the football more? I wanted to see him be featured. I wanted to see him be utilized. He kind of wasn't. But I think he's also a good enough inline blocker for you as well. 26 catches, 324 yards, 4 touchdowns this year. He just didn't get a ton of targets, man. Like he really didn't. 6'3", 241. And like I said, I've seen him in line going after people, attempting to block. He doesn't mind it at all. He doesn't shy away from it. So I think from there, he's somebody that can help you in some of the physical aspects. And look what Priestcorn was this year and last year, what he's meant to that team, what he's been. When Trigg was there and healthy and on the right path, you saw the kind of plays that he could make in that offense. It is the position in this offense that can sort of be the separator. And I think when you get that guy, you use him and you use him to an extent that is going to give you big matchup problems and essentially a lot of free yards as well. Daquan Wright kind of became that guy a little bit later in the season for Ole Miss where he could stretch the field some, take some quick throws and be able to turn those into bigger plays. But you get somebody that you're not going to lose much on the physical side and is going to be athletic enough to be able to make plays. His athleticism is underrated. He can be every bit of what Priestcorn's been in that offense. I think it's an amazing get because he's going to help you at the line of scrimmage. He's going to help you in the flat. He's going to help you down the field. And he's going to give you some physicality that's not backing down to people and not going to be a liability in that department for your football team. So I love it. I love the get for Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. Luke Haas, tight end out of Arkansas. Number 1, transfer portal player to land in the SEC this week is Barryon Brown, Kentucky wide receiver, now going to LSU. They've moved some numbers this week. Barryon Brown, 6'1", 182. Let's just get this out of the way. The drops are a problem, and the drops have been a problem. The inconsistency is not there. I do think that there were some other headaches that were kind of going on and happening, but if you can square that up, if you can shore that up, this is a dynamo. And he helps you with field position, scoring, and on offense because he's a dynamic kick returner as well. 50 kickoff returns in his career, 5 touchdowns, 1,495 yards. He has 19 receptions of 25 yards or more in his career. He is a big-time talent, big-time speed, 122 receptions, 1,528 yards, 11 touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns in his career. He's big enough to play outside, but he's quick enough, fast enough to take the screens, the short stuff, and be able to turn those into explosive plays as well. I love this get. I think it's great for LSU, and LSU's done some damage. So we would go Red Hibbler 5, NC State edge to Mississippi State, Kevin Coleman wide receiver from Mississippi State 4 to Missouri, Jackson Arnold quarterback out of Oklahoma 3 to Auburn, Luke Haas Arkansas tight end out of Ole Miss 2 to Ole Miss, and then 1 Kentucky wide receiver Barryon Brown going to LSU. I think there's only 1 non-SEC player going to those top 5, which is also weird. All right, a couple of others that have happened here over this week. Landon Watson, linebacker for Marshall, going to Kentucky. They're going to need bodies there. Texas gets defensive tackle Cole Bernard from Purdue, 6'3", 333, 5.5 tackles for loss last year. Big 91, played a lot of nose guard. He played inside. He's heavy, but he doesn't look overweight. So he moves fairly well for 333. I know that sounds crazy. Uses his hands extremely well. When he feels a center or guard blocking back, he can turn and pin that offensive lineman to be able to kind of redirect some things behind the line of scrimmage with the pullers and then play over the top of it really well. Does get his shoulder pads turned a little bit, but watched some of him today. Felt pretty good about him because Texas is getting those bigger, thicker defensive tackles that they want to be able to just jam things up in the middle of the offensive line. And I think he's a guy that can do that. State goes and gets Jerron Glover, wide receiver out of Michigan State. Brennan Thompson, Oklahoma wide receiver. They had high expectations for him this year. They love the kid. He hadn't been healthy, but if he can come in and be healthy, then he can fit in well into that offense. Nevaeh Sanders out of NIU, an edge defender, along with Hibbler, who we mentioned, and then Jerron Manning, a safety out of Old Dominion from Mississippi State. Auburn also gets Darnell Robinson, a running back out of UConn, 6'1", 200. I'm a fan of this young man. Great feet, great body control, enough breakaway speed to be able to provide that. 107 carries, 731 yards, 8 touchdowns. He's 6'1", 200. He was a true freshman this year. So obviously some of the fundamentals will still come. But losing Jarquez Hunter, I think this is a great get for Hugh Freeze in Auburn. We already mentioned Jackson Arnold. But that was a good get, and I feel good about that one for Auburn. LSU gets Michael Van Buren, former Mississippi State quarterback. Listen, I know there were some bumps and some headaches here. I like this kid. You guys heard me talking about him during the season. I think he's got the tools, the skills. He's definitely got the toughness and the moxie. I mean, how many hits did he stand in there and take trying to complete passes? I kind of hated to see him go, specifically once I saw that it wasn't going to be Jackson Arnold that was going to Mississippi State, which I think we all just figured was going to happen. Also, they get Jakeem Jackson, cornerback out of Florida. I mentioned Barryon Brown and Bauer Sharp, tight end Oklahoma to LSU. So if that's real, that's what I read this morning, then you're talking about an extremely fast, athletic tight end that got better and better and better with his blocking. Someone who actually, he's a former quarterback, loves the physical part of the game, not afraid of it, doesn't back off from it, but he's light and struggled with SEC contact early on, but grew into it. He can be a weapon for you, man. I'm telling you, if you know how to feature him and you know how to move him around and get him singled up, he'll beat any linebacker that's going to be out there on him. So that could be a really good get, specifically with Mason Taylor saying he's going to the NFL. So Ole Miss also gets Deshaun Womack, an edge from LSU. Patrick Kudus, offensive lineman from Arkansas. He's been okay at times. PJ Wilkins, a linebacker out of Charlotte. And Princewell Umanmielen, an edge defender out of Nebraska. I watched him. Great length. Physically, he looks like exactly what you would want in an edge defender. Not a ton of twitch. This is not like the other man Yellen. He's bigger and a little bit thicker, but long arms, giant wingspan, pretty good rush capabilities, but not really scary around the edge. So he can be handled and managed. He was on the move a lot. They stunned him a lot when I watched him. Uses his hands fairly well. He doesn't shy away from playing against the run. So I think he'll help you there. But if they up the effort a little bit on a more consistent basis, I think he's a guy who can really help them. South Carolina gets Jalen Brown, an edge out of Missouri. They get Nick Sharp, an offensive lineman out of Wake. Sharp physically has the body. He's going to give you a big SEC body at guard. He looks like an SEC guard. Good hands, strong hands, comes off the ball, gets pad level just increasingly comes up as he stays in the game. So that's got to change. I think his conditioning is probably a little bit of an issue, just watching his fundamentals fade as the game goes on. And he was a rotational player this year, but he's big, strong, and gives you a little bit of a physical presence that South Carolina hasn't had a ton of inside for a while. So I think that could end up being a good get for the Gamecocks. Vanderbilt gets Jordan White, offensive lineman out of Liberty. A&M gets Julian Humphrey, cornerback out of Georgia. Also tight end Micah Riley from Auburn. That's a good get for A&M, who was sneaky good at tight end last year, and not a ton of people talked about it. Micah Riley's got some shit to him. I'm just going to tell you right now. He was one of the 3 or 4 guys that I constantly asked after every game, why are these kids just not in the game? At least get somebody in there that wants to trade some paint and wants to knock somebody on the ground. He was one of those guys. So I think I've seen a little bit of him catching balls. I don't think he's a dynamic receiver, but physically he's going to be able to help you. And you had a little bit of that last year, so you get a little bit more of that. Finally, Arkansas gets Raylan Sharp, a wide receiver out of Fresno State, 5'9", 165. So they'll use him on some of the quick games, some of the short stuff. All right, so that's kind of some transfer portal updates this week from different SEC teams. You guys also know we're brought to you by Blue Delta Jeans, the best denim you'll ever get. Custom fit. They can digitally fit these now. Christmas right around the corner. Can still get a gift card. Go to bluedeltajeans.com. Tell you heard about them here on Cube Show. Once you get a pair, you're not going to want to switch it up. You're not. You are going to want to wear your Blue Deltas everywhere you go. Dress them up, casual. bluedeltajeans.com for the best jeans you'll ever own. All right, so it's been a weird week. We've got Bill Belichick, coach of North Carolina. Dan Mullen back in the game at UNLV. Barry Odom at Purdue now, a move that I think a lot of us kind of was a little bit of a head scratcher as to why you had so much going at UNLV and Purdue would be the one that you would take. I thought he'd be up for bigger jobs. You heard John Summerall's name for the North Carolina job, didn't take it. He's going to get bigger job offers in the next year or two. So when I heard Belichick originally, I was like, no, just no way, not going to happen. Thought about it more, said, nah, no. Heard the press conference started to change my mind. Started putting a little more thought into this. And I think there are 2 things that could hurt Belichick here or help Belichick here, because most of us don't think it's going to work if you had to go one way or the other. But I do think kind of people will say that the player treatment part's not going to work because he's too brash, he's too gruff, he's too hardcore, whatever. But I do think sort of the black and white, like yes, no nature and not being very wishy-washy could actually work to his benefit, where he tells players what it's going to be, how it's going to be, and that's just going to be it, where they're getting mixed messages in a lot of other places. I think that could benefit him. And then also, when we talk NFL experience coming to college, I think oftentimes we think scheme, like, oh, he'll have more complex defenses or his route tree will be this much more diverse. But now, with where we are in today's college football, we could be looking at a massive advantage for someone like Bill Belichick because he understands the fiscal ways to run a team, where to spend the money, where not to spend the money, who gets more money, who doesn't get as much money. And he also understands that you're going to have roster attrition and roster turnover. Now, it's probably more now in college than it's ever been in the NFL. But he also understands that the same guys are not always going to be there. So I do think there are some aspects of this that could benefit him, which is how to understand the operation of it and how it's going to work. And that could give Belichick some advantages. Same thing with Mullen going to UNLV. So the knock on Mullen is he's not this, just radiant recruiter who's nonstop and can't stop recruiting and just on the road all the time. Okay. Well, in today's college football, do you have to be that guy? I know Kirby still is. I know Lanning still is. I know certain guys are, but you're recruiting a large portion of the guys. And when you have the guy there through NIL, And UNLV's got a nice backing from the Fertitta brothers and a couple other folks out there in Las Vegas. So if that's squared away and Dan Mullen can go to people and say, hey, this is the scheme, this is how we play, this is what I can do for you, the NIL part's taken care of. It's a different sell at that point in time. And where I think Dan Mullen will have success is recruiting the portal, because Dan Mullen is going to take especially now sitting in that analyst booth for TV, which he was great at, and looking at it a little bit different way. He can go to certain kids and say, this is why I can help you here. This is what we're going to do for you that wasn't being done here. Also, second time around, why would you want to come live in Las Vegas? We've got opportunities here, all kind of stuff happening out here. We got the NBA is here, the NHL is here, we got UFC here, we got boxing here, the NFL is here, MLB is coming here. There's opportunities. So I just think there are going to be more things that are an easier sell for him and his style of recruiter that could benefit him moving forward that maybe worked against him previously. But a lot of change happening in the coaching world, and it's going to be interesting to see just kind of how Rich Rod back at West Virginia. I love that hire. Would not be surprised to see Bill Clark, former UAB head coach, taking that one. He's familiar with it, and he would win there. And so they've got the support behind him, I think, at their level, and could do some good things. All right, college football playoff, 12-team, first time ever. Sat in Sunday school this morning. My wife starts talking about our group Christmas party for the Sunday school, and she's like, yeah, Friday, 6:30. And I think she saw the expression on my face. And she got about halfway through explaining it, and we had a little bit of a lighter class today. She turns over to me, and I was like, just, small detail, first ever playoff game of a 12-team playoff, 7 p.m. that night. So I hadn't been here in the last 16 Sundays. I'm not sure what you guys were thinking, but hey, here we go. We'll be there. It'll be fun. All right, let's start with the 10-7, Indiana, Notre Dame. That'll be Friday night. Indiana's going to put up a fight. Indiana's going to be dangerous. I think Notre Dame wins the game. I think +1 with Jeremiah Love and Riley Leonard running the football in a +1 nature with the physical offensive line. They'll be able to grind some yards out. I do like the Indiana D-line. I think they're active. I think they're problematic. I think you probably take the under in this game if I was looking at it from that perspective. I do think that Notre Dame's defensive line and the way that they play can be of benefit against that RPO system that Indiana wants to run. Big game for Notre Dame linebackers. They have to be on point. But being at home, I think, is going to be massive. And I think being able to control a lot of this game also for Notre Dame will be the reason that they get that win. I think it's going to be a hell of a game. Honestly, I really do. I think Penn State gets SMU. Love what SMU does. Love the athleticism at quarterback. Love everything on the perimeter. But I think Penn State's going to be able to play lighter in the box, add more to the quick throws, the screens, the end-around stuffs on the perimeter, play a little bit wider, and still be able to manage the run inside. If SMU gets the run going inside early, that's when you need to watch out and just think to yourself, this is probably not going to go the direction we think it is. And then I don't think Drew Aller's going to have to do a ton. I think a lot of this will be on the ground. Keep in mind, you got a little bit of a lighter front. SMU's D-line's good now. They can play, but they're a little bit lighter with a lot of the pin and pull, gap scheme stuff where you get out of position, it's out the gate. So, and then I think you have the second best player in college football in Tyler Warren. You'll be able to move him around, do different things. He's a mismatch wherever he is. He'll get his. Penn State moves on. I think Penn State handles Boise as well in the next round. Love Ashton Genty. That offensive line's not even great. I just don't think that they're going to have enough to be able to get past Penn State. I think Georgia takes down Notre Dame in the next round. It doesn't matter who's at quarterback. I think Georgia wins that game, and they'll go see Penn State in the semifinals to get to the national championship game, where I think Georgia will knock off Penn State, because even if it is a backup quarterback, by this time he's now experienced. You're not going to have to build a ton for him to do. He'll have some mobility. You can utilize that. And that defensive line is going to wreck shop. So I will say this, edge defenders of Penn State against Georgia tackles. Penn State, Georgia can't run the ball early or find quick throws to get some yards early and give them comfortable second and third downs. That's when it could be a massive problem for Georgia, because those tackles have been an issue all year. And those are a couple of the best edge defenders that they'll see. They've seen a lot of good ones that those kids can play. Tennessee, Ohio State. I'm taking Tennessee. I love the physicality on both sides of the ball. McElroy and I had a great exercise this week on our morning radio show. He has said if it was just based on blunt force trauma, just pure physicality, who wins this game if that's all? Who wins this tournament if that's all it is, through all the teams? And I came out with Tennessee at the end of the day. I think the tight end position, I think even a couple of the receivers with how physical they play for wide receivers, the offensive line, the defensive line, specifically the middle of that defensive line. I don't think there is a team that offers up more just brute force physicality across the board than Tennessee does. And I realize that people are going to hate that. They're going to comment on it and be mad about it. They're going to tell me I'm a moron, and that's fine. I've watched the freaking tape. So I know it has to be Ohio State, right? And it has to be Notre Dame, right? Notre Dame's offensive line gets after you pretty good. Tight ends, not afraid to mix it up, get in there. I love how we're crossing that defense. They're not as physical as Tennessee's group. They're just not. Sorry. Oregon, not there with that group. Texas, offensively, no. Defensively, yes. Offensively, no. And Georgia will be the next in line. But to me, Georgia's is the way that I described it to Greg when those two teams met in the national championship game of our practice was, if we're going on scales of 10, Georgia can hit 11 when they want to. Tennessee maxes out at 9. Tennessee lives on about an 8. Georgia lives on about a 6. But Georgia can get to 11. Tennessee can only get to 9. But Tennessee lives around an 8. So I think Tennessee's up there more often. Georgia has the capability to get past them in that department. We just don't see it as much as we do with Tennessee. I think Tennessee gets past that game, and then I think Tennessee goes down to Oregon. I think down the field will be a little bit of an issue for Oregon. Quick game will neutralize a lot of that defensive line that we just talked about. And this won't be just about physicality. The one thing that I do kind of like about Tennessee versus the Oregon defense is I still believe a large majority of what Oregon causes defensively is because of scheme. They have good players. They got a good defensive line. They got a good front seven. They're active. They got a couple guys that got good power. But I think the scheme creates a lot of it. Now, they still got to go make the plays. And they're just being put in positions to make those plays. Now, if Tennessee handles it and just gets a hat on a hat the right way, it could be explosive play city because of how Tennessee runs different things with the tight ends inserting and then kicking out. And then some of the split zones and even some of the throws off those could end up being big for how it's played. So that'll be a fun matchup to watch if we get to it. I think Texas takes out Clemson. I think that defensive line will overwhelm Clemson's offensive line. Klubnik's been great not turning it over this year. I think Texas with Jade Barron and company on the back end, Taft, they find a way to get a couple turnovers. They run the football again. It won't be as easy against this Clemson defensive line. Quarterback's going to probably have to make a couple of plays, and then Texas moves on. I said Oregon past Tennessee to get into that next round. And I got to throw a flyer out here somewhere. One of them is going to happen. We're going to get an upset. So I'm going to take Arizona State over Texas. I love the way they run the football. Here's what I like most about Arizona State when I watch them. They're physical. Yes, their offensive line gets after you. They're big and strong. Scatterboo, big, strong. It's amazing to me the amount of times that they are wrong that they make themselves right. An offensive lineman misses an assignment, but because of the way he goes to the next person and knocks them out of the play, Scatterboo makes one miss, and all of a sudden it's a 20-yard gain instead of a 2-yard gain. Or Scatterboo making guys miss in the backfield, or some of the things that the quarterback does and how crafty he is are going to be able to open different things up. I just think they're kind of a find-a-way team, and I think they'll shorten that game. I don't think that their defensive line is athletic enough to be able to slow everything down from the Texas rushing quick game attack, and I'll make that like both. And keep in mind, if you're going to beat Texas, like Georgia's done, have to tackle in space, and that'll be the big thing for Arizona State. If they can find a way to do that, they can slow this game down, get a couple scores, play good defense in the red zone where Texas has not been great this year, and then they go pull the upset. Probably need a couple turnovers. They're going to have to get to the quarterback, get a ball out a couple times, intercept a few. But it's just one that I'm throwing out there because I know one's going to happen, and I don't really see it, and I'm not going full chalk. So then Oregon would get past them. Georgia's already in the national championship game. Georgia-Oregon national championship. I picked Georgia before the season, so I'm not going to go away from it now. I think Georgia wins the national championship with the backup quarterback, which would be pretty incredible, and probably Kirby's best coaching job if he actually takes it. And that's what takes place, and it goes down that way. So there it is. Portal update, portal info. We'll look at some of the other SEC bowls next week. We'll recap the early college football playoff games, look ahead for those and what those matchups are going to be like. Always appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you so much. Go subscribe, iTunes, Spotify. Please like and subscribe here on YouTube if you're watching there, and we will be back next week.